10 productivity tips and habits that collectively we do not like. My first point is Notion.
Well. How the turntables.
As you can see, I've pretty famously said that I don't like using Notion, and now here we are doing a Notion tour. What changed between now and then? Basically, I started working with a virtual assistant in May, and so I needed to get a lot more organized. I needed to create a content calendar that made sense not only to me, but to another person that was working with me, so that I could collaborate with them and they could look at my work and understand what the heck was going on in my brain, and Notion has worked pretty darn well for that. So let me go into my circle and we're going to do the Notion workspace tour. I know you've all been waiting for this. So this is the homepage. This is the Blissbean workspace. As you can see, it is a copy. I copied my original workspace so that I could delete a couple of private information things, but otherwise this is very true to what the original looks like. I rarely look at this homepage, but on the occasion that I do, I put this little thing here that's kind of like a mission statement for the Blissbean just to remind me of why I do what I do. It's the Blissbean inspires people to create fulfilling and joyful lives through self-reflection and intentional habits. So let's get into the first section, how I manage my content calendar. So I have all of the Blissbean platforms divided out here in this platforms section. However, all content is contained in this huge ass database called Content Calendar. I want all pieces of content to live in the same database on the same calendar so that I can see how they sort of interact with each other, if that makes sense. So like if I post a podcast here, I also want to see what related Instagram promotions am I planning on posting that day. What's the newsletter about that week, and could I mention the podcast in that newsletter? However, this is a lot of information to take in, right? So this is where I implement filters in order to see only the information that I need to see at a given time. Let's open up the YouTube page and I'll show you how this works. So what I did was I created a separate page for each platform, and inside that page I created what is called a linked database. A linked database, guess what it does? It links to another database. So this one links to the content calendar. It's just a different view of the same database. And what I did was I set up a filter. You can do filters up here. I set up a filter so that I only see the pieces of content where the platform is tagged as a YouTube video. So you see what that does? That takes that entire gigantic content calendar and it only shows me the YouTube videos. So the other filter I have on here, as you can see, there's this and thing here, which means that any piece of content displayed here has to match both conditions. So I can only see YouTube videos that were made that were published no more than 1 month ago, or I still have not gotten paid for them no matter how old they are. So the reason I do this is obviously because I don't want to see videos from a year ago. That's not really relevant to me. I do find it helpful to see the past month of videos just so that I can kind of see what topics have I been talking about, to make sure that I'm not always talking about the same things on here. And then the payment thing is just because I want to get paid. Okay, so let's talk about properties. Just in case you're a Notion noob, which is totally fine, properties are these headers of your database. So for me, I have date, name of the video, status, sponsor, audience, editor, and other notes. This database actually has a lot more properties that I've hidden. So I can see all of the properties if I click here. However, the only ones that I've decided to show on this page are ones that are relevant to YouTube videos. So for example, editor, that is relevant to YouTube videos, but not relevant to newsletters. Guest only applies to the podcast because I don't have guests on my YouTube videos, and so I don't want to see that on this page. So the properties that I do see on YouTube are the date it's going to be published, the title of the video, what's the status of it, I'm going to come back to this and explain it more, who's the sponsor, audience is like, are only the people who are really fans of the Blissbean going to be interested, or is this a video anyone might be interested in, and who is going to be editing it, and then any random notes that I want to see. So let me explain those status tags to you. These are the options that we have. So these colors are actually important, they're not random. Green means that it is my turn to do something next. Pink means that it is Maya's turn. Maya's my assistant. So when a video is started, it is green because I have to just like write down my basic ideas for it. Then Maya does a few things to like research more in-depth ideas for the video. Then I have to write the script. Then she has to review the script. Then I film the video. Then either one of us edits it. Oh, let me just move this here. And then Maya uploads the video. So one of the cool things that you can do in Notion is that you can make templates. So I have a template for YouTube videos, podcast episodes, and newsletters. So let me show you the YouTube template. So when you create a new database item from a template, it automatically populates it with all of this stuff. So what I have here is, first of all, there's these two buttons. You can make buttons in Notion where if you click the button, it will automatically generate a set of blocks. So these are just slightly different in that the process is a little bit different if I'm editing the video or if someone else is editing it. But for example, if I'm editing the video, I would click on that button, then delete those buttons, and then we have these checklists. So as I said, first I write down my ideas, then Maya researches them, I write the script, Maya reviews the script, I film the video, I edit the video, and then finally Maya uploads it. And then down here we have a bunch of headers for notes about the video, like thumbnail ideas that we have, how we might promote the video on Instagram, etc. And then down here is where I plan out my B-roll shot list. So B-roll that I need to film, B-roll that I know I have on my hard drives and I just need to find it, and then any graphics that I need to design, and then I write my script here. So let me show you what a finished video page looks like. How I prepare for the academic year. This is a good one. So these were the title ideas that we were working with, the tags that we had, a lot of tags, thumbnail ideas. So one of the nice things is that in Notion you can very easily just drop in an image. So we'll go on YouTube and we'll see what are the thumbnails of the popular videos on this topic, how can we incorporate those elements, what other ideas do we have, throw that all in there. We had some editing ideas as well, and then these were my shot list for B-roll and my big long script. So usually when I'm filming, I have my computer right in front of me and I am just reading directly off that script. As you might know, in Notion you can have different views for your databases. So usually for YouTube, the only one that I actually use is the table view. I don't find the board view very helpful, and I also don't find the calendar view helpful for YouTube videos, podcasts, or newsletters, because YouTube videos, for example, they always happen on the same day. They're always on Fridays. So it doesn't really help to see a calendar because they're all just going to be like in one column like this. So yeah, the table is my favorite view. When I'm doing my weekly planning and figuring out what I need to do in the upcoming week, I basically will look at this list and be like, I need to finish editing this video, I need to film this Notion tour, I need to brainstorm ideas for these few upcoming videos, etc. Okay, moving on to the podcast page. This one is a lot simpler. The YouTube page is by far the most complicated, so don't worry. Once again, this filters podcast episodes that are no more than 1 month old, and then I have the template for a podcast. I also have buttons for this, but this time the buttons are either for a solo episode or an episode with a guest, and if it would load, I will show you how those are different. Here we go. Okay, so if a podcast does have a guest, that involves a few extra steps because you have to like communicate with them, decide on the topics, ask them to send you a photo and stuff, whereas if it is a solo episode, then it's a lot simpler. And then here we also have those headers for like editing notes for when Maya edits the episode, ideas to promote it. We also use the status labels for podcast episodes, however we only use some of them, so it goes from start to film, edit, upload. So the process is not as complicated as that of YouTube videos, but we can still use the same tags, just skip some of the parts of the process. A good example is my podcast episode about music and concerts and stuff. So what I did here was I had my outline for what to talk about. After I recorded it, I wrote in red text like which snippets of songs I wanted Maya to edit into the podcast. I also had a few editing notes for her. We had a few promotion ideas. We don't always like actually check off the checklist because by now we just remember what we need to do. Like by now we're professionals, but they're still nice to refer to. I included the image here that I wanted her to put in the blog post, and then once the final podcast was edited, you can also actually embed files into Notion. So Maya put the audio file in here and I listened to it to review it. The newsletter page is even simpler. That one only has 2 possible status tags. It's either write or upload. I do have a template for that, but that is also so simple I don't even know if it's worth showing it to you. Oh, by the way, if you want to sign up for that newsletter, you can go to theblissbean.com/newsletter and get a free dose of motivation and inspiration in your inbox every Monday. This is one that I wrote recently as an example. I have the text here, action step, recommendations, and then Maya takes this and she brings it into ConvertKit, which is my email marketing software, and sends it out. Okay, the Instagram database is where I plan out the photos that I'm going to post and the captions that are going to go with those photos. The reason I filtered this all the way back to the beginning of September is because I was more organized with Instagram then, so this is just better to show you. Sometimes I'm in phases where I'm just posting very spontaneously spontaneously coming up with captions on the fly, being creative, and other times I have like the entire week of content planned out ahead of time. Before the name of the post, I will write feed, stories, or reel to distinguish between the different types of content on Instagram, because Instagram just loves to keep adding more and more different ways to post, and it's like stories and IGTV and reels and feed posts, carousel posts. So if it's a reel, then I would use the photo column to like write down a little shot list of the clips that I need to film for it. I also have a page for TikTok. I'm pretty new to TikTok. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to use the platform. Also just how to use it in general. I find that with something like TikTok, I can't just come up with ideas on demand. Like with YouTube videos, I will sit down and be like, okay, I'm using this 30 minutes to brainstorm ideas for this video, or to write this script, or to plan this B-roll shot list. But with TikToks, ideas just kind of randomly come into my head. So for example, sometimes I have an idea for a TikTok, for example, a journaling prompts one, but I don't know what sound I would use along with that, so I left that blank. In other cases, I hear a sound that's popular on TikTok, like that one that's the one where people are running away from the camera and it's like, nobody, nobody. Okay, so I don't know how I would translate that into a TikTok about personal development or productivity or studying or whatever, but I like the sound. So if ever my brain comes up with a good TikTok idea, I will fill that in, but for now I just have that square of the grid filled in. So to summarize how I manage my content calendar on Notion, let's just review very quickly. I have everything in this big content calendar database, and then I've divided it into different pages with linked databases in order to see only one specific type of content on each page. I hope you're taking notes. Next, I have my project pages. So this is where one-time projects live. Like all of this is content that happens every day, every week, etc. These are just one-time things. So for example, the book, Plan and Organize Your Life, available everywhere now, and the website redesign that I eventually want to do. I have no set date for that. I just use this page to dump all of the ideas that I have when I notice something on my website that I don't like, or something on someone else's website that I do like. Even though I have no idea when this will actually happen, it's really good to just have a place to store information so that by the time I am ready to actually redesign my website, I know exactly where all of my ideas are. Okie dokie, so the next section is called time. I don't really know why we called it time, but it's basically for meetings. So on the meetings page, we have all of our upcoming meetings, and then I tag it with the date, maybe the time that it's happening, and what the meeting is for. So I do have two templates. I have a weekly meeting template and a monthly review that me and Maya do. As you know, when I'm doing my personal planning, I love doing weekly reviews, and I go over just what went well, what didn't go well. And so this is kind of similar to that. We basically go what went well regarding working on YouTube this week, what could have gone better, one improvement for next week, anything that we need to discuss, and then just looking ahead on the calendar to what's coming up in the next week. And then the monthly review, I feel like I'm still figuring out how exactly I want to do these, but basically we will write down all of the analytics for the past month, and then Maya does some research on like which videos from the Bliss Bean did best that month, what keywords are people looking for, what topics are they wanting to watch, how is engagement doing, and ideas for the next month and stuff. So what I really like about having these pages for these meetings created in advance is that a lot of times a question or some concern will pop into my head, like for example, something that I need to ask my agency, but maybe it's not urgent, but it is something that I need to discuss. So instead of immediately messaging them about it, I can put it on that page just as a bullet point topic to discuss. This page here is an archive of past meetings that we've had. And I think the reason you don't actually see the past meeting notes is because I deleted them for privacy reasons, but this would be a really long database because this shows all of the meeting notes that we've ever taken. Basically, I think what you can see from this is that my goal is always that each piece of information has a home. Each idea that pops into my head, each question that I need to ask someone, there is always a dedicated place to write it down so that I don't have to keep track of all of this stuff in my head, and I can like metaphorically just set it down and not worry about it, but know that eventually I will be reminded of it again when I need to remember it. The next two sections are content and behind the scenes. One of the things I talked about in that video where I said that I don't like using Notion is I talked about how I like just using a Google Docs simply because it is messy, and just seeing all of my ideas dumped onto one page, not really organized in any way, helped to inspire me. However, now the thing is that I'm working with an assistant, I'm working with another person who needs needs to understand how my brain works and what I mean when I write down certain things. And so this is actually working really well for us now. We just name the idea. If I have ideas for what specifically to talk about in that video or podcast episode or whatever, I will open that page and add those ideas there. The really, I think, important and helpful aspect of this is the platforms column. The idea is that pretty much any piece of content can be repurposed for multiple platforms. Like, if you can make a video out of it, you can probably also make a podcast episode, you can shorten it into a newsletter, you could do an Instagram post about it. It is hard to come up with good ideas, so like if you come up with a good one, squeeze the content out of it. The brain dump is exactly what it sounds like. This is just where we dump ideas before we organize them. Big picture was something that I came up with because I started thinking about, like, for example, oh, I want to do a back to school series next year. That's so far away that I'm not going to actually add it to my content calendar yet. So I found this format helpful for scheduling things like that, like tasks that I know I'm going to need to do far off in the future, or video theme ideas, series ideas, things like that. The sponsors page, we're actually not using this anymore, but I did want to show you in case you would find it helpful. So here we would compile all of the brands that we worked with on sponsored content, who we were in contact with, what their email was, the content that we made for them, and the platforms that we collaborated on. So I don't use this anymore because I actually started working with an agency that now manages all of my brand sponsorships. But if you are a one-person team and you are starting to do brand work, I would highly recommend compiling all this information in one place, because the thing about brand sponsorships is that if you do one, then you can go back and offer them more sponsored content, and they already know that they can trust you and that you create good work for them, and that's a lot easier than continuously going to new brands and trying to establish new relationships. So for example, let's say you make videos and you have a newsletter and you made a video for a brand, you might go back to them and be like, hey, I also have this really cool newsletter, I have a really big mailing list, and I send this weekly newsletter, would you like to sponsor one of them? The toolkit is a database where I compile all of the things that I use and that I'm subscribed to. This describes like what each tool is used for and how much it costs, and what I did was I sorted it in reverse price order from like most expensive to least expensive, so that I can question whether we really need these things. For example, with email marketing, fun fact is that when you send emails out to a bunch of people and you use one of those tools like MailChimp or ConvertKit, you have to pay per subscriber. And so once in a while, what you want to do is cut out subscribers who have not been opening your emails in a long time, because you are paying for them even though they are not even bothering to read what you so kindly send them. The analytics page is pretty self-explanatory. These are weekly YouTube analytics and then monthly analytics for everything else. The knowledge database, basically when Maya and I started working together, I already had a lot of my systems and processes figured out. All I needed to do was get it out of my head and write it down somewhere so that she had these step-by-step processes to follow for everything. This is actually growing. I created like a few tutorials to get her started, and once in a while when some new task arises, we make a new one or she makes a new one. I think a good example is the editing and uploading a podcast one. So file naming conventions, how to edit it, how to upload it, how to organize the files and communicate with the guests, screenshots, etc. I think that's one of the strongest uses of Notion, is using it as like a wiki or a knowledge database basically, because a lot of people compare it to building with Lego blocks, and it really is like that. You just have so much freedom in how you want to organize it, and different blocks that you can use. Like this is a call out block, this is a toggle, this is a bullet point list. Obviously you can put in images and captions, anything that you would need to explain something to someone, you've got it here. There are a few pages at the bottom for Maya. So one is her time tracking. She tracks how much time she spent working on the Bliss Bean stuff each day and what she was working on. Responsibilities for Maya as my assistant. So this was actually created by her, I believe. I just gave her like a list of stuff that she does each week, and then she organized it in the way that made sense to her. Days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and what weekly tasks she does on each day. Daily things to do, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and as needed. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I guess my experience with Notion taught me to never say never, because at first I thought it wouldn't work for my purposes, but once I really gave it a try, and I also acknowledged that like I can use it for my work life, but not necessarily for my personal life. No one's forcing me to meal plan or organize my chores in Notion. I realized that it could actually work really well for me, and I especially really like the collaboration features. We can leave comments on stuff and have comment threads. We can share pages with other people even. So I hope you found this video helpful. Even if you're not a content creator, I hope you were able to pick up some Notion tips and tricks to help you set up your workspace. Let me know if you have any questions or tips for me if you see something that I do kind of poorly and you have an idea for how I could do it better. I have a link in the description where you can give Notion a try, and I will see you next week. Bye!